Here's something nobody tells you about billion-dollar deals. They almost never start with money. They start with a sentence. One sentence in a 240-page contract, on page 163, that everyone in the room has already signed past. One clause that says, if you read it completely, if you read it the way almost nobody reads a contract, that the entire deal can be undone. Most lawyers see that sentence and keep moving. They have a closing to attend. They have a client who doesn't want bad news. They have a career that rewards agreement over accuracy. Nadia Osei was 27 years old. It was midnight in a Lagos law office, and she read that sentence 4 times before she circled it in red. Her senior partner ignored it. The deal collapsed exactly as she predicted. She received no credit. She received a salary. And then, because she had been right too many times in the wrong place, she resigned. She took nothing with her except 3 years of notes and one question she had been asking herself since year 1. What happens if the person who finds the clause also gets to act on it? What happens if the lawyer becomes the deal? Stay with me. Because what Nadia built next didn't just make her a billionaire. It rebuilt 14 failing companies, employed 3,400 people, and proved that the most powerful asset in business has never been capital. It has always been the ability to read. The law is a language. Most people speak it well enough to get by. Nadia Osei decided to read it completely. The difference, in the end, was $1 billion and 14 companies that should have died, and didn't. Nadia Osei is a corporate lawyer, 3 years into a mid-tier Lagos firm, and she is reading a 240-page acquisition contract at midnight when she finds it. A force majeure subclause that, technically and completely legally, voids the entire €18 million deal her firm's client is about to sign. She flags it. Her senior partner reviews it. He tells her the client doesn't want to hear it. The deal has momentum, relationships are at stake, and anyway, these clauses never get enforced. Nadia writes a 2-page memo anyway. She files it internally. 6 months later, the deal collapses for precisely the reason she identified. Her memo is accurate in every particular. Her senior partner takes the client call. Nadia is not in the room. She is at her desk. She is reading the next contract. In 3 years of corporate law, Nadia Osei reviews 340 commercial contracts, 27 acquisition agreements, 14 debt restructuring deals, and 6 insolvency proceedings. She keeps notes on all of them. Not case notes, pattern notes. She is looking for the same thing in every document. The gap between what the language says and what the parties believe it says. The gap is almost always there. Sometimes it is small. Sometimes it is the entire deal. She builds a private database, organized by clause type, industry, jurisdiction, and outcome. By year 3, she has identified 11 recurring structural patterns in failing acquisitions. She has named each one. She has never told anyone the names. She is still figuring out what to do with them. A struggling Lagos printing company, Crestline Press, goes into receivership. Nadia's firm is engaged to advise the creditors. She reads the receivership documents over a weekend and identifies a legally permissible path to acquire the company's assets at roughly 11 cents on the naira, restructure the debt across 3 creditor classes, and resume operations within 60 days. She writes a 14-page acquisition memo. Her partner reads it, nods, and hands it to a client who uses it to acquire Crestline Press exactly as she outlined. The client pays the firm a standard advisory fee. Nadia receives her salary. The client, using her memo as a blueprint, turns Crestline profitable inside 8 months and sells it 2 years later for 420 million Nigerian nairas. Nadia's cut of the upside, 0. She resigns on the day the sale is announced. Her resignation letter is 3 sentences long. The third sentence is, I've decided to use my own advice. Nadia takes 3 months to convert her pattern database into a proprietary acquisition framework she calls the 11. Each pattern represents a specific legal condition under which a distressed company's assets can be acquired below market value, legally, transparently, and defensibly. She is not looking for fraud. She is not looking for corners to cut. She is looking for what the law permits that most people, including most lawyers, have not taken the time to understand. The difference between a loophole and a legal mechanism is not moral. It is attentional. Nadia has been paying attention for 3 years. The 11 is the result. She puts the framework in a locked folder on an encrypted drive. She names the folder Q. Nadia's first acquisition target, Meridian Logistics, a mid-size freight company carrying 1.2 billion Nigerian nairas in total assets and 890 million Nigerian nairas in restructurable debt, currently in default on 2 secured credit facilities and 1 month away from involuntary liquidation. Pattern 4 from the 11 applies, a dual creditor conflict clause. 2 of Meridian's 3 secured creditors hold contradictory enforcement rights under a poorly drafted inter-creditor agreement, meaning neither can act unilaterally to enforce their security without triggering a technical breach against the other. The company is frozen. The directors are paralyzed. Nobody has noticed the conflict because nobody has read both agreements simultaneously. Nadia has. She spends 180,000 Nigerian nairas, most of her savings, registering a vehicle company and engaging a single junior solicitor. She writes the acquisition offer herself. It is 11 pages long. She submits it on a Tuesday morning. Meridian's board rejects the offer. Their reason: we are exploring alternative restructuring options. Nadia notes the language carefully. Exploring means no signed term sheet. Alternative means no creditor agreement. Options means nothing is imminent. She does not resubmit. She waits. She monitors the company's creditor filings through the public court registry. 6 weeks later, the larger secured creditor files an enforcement notice. The inter-creditor conflict immediately activates. The second creditor files a counter-notice within 48 hours. The board calls an emergency meeting. On the morning of that meeting, Nadia resubmits her offer, identical terms, new cover letter, one sentence added at the top. The inter-creditor conflict you are now experiencing was identified and disclosed in our previous submission. The board calls her that afternoon. She picks up on the second ring. Nadia acquires Meridian Logistics' core asset portfolio for 94 million Nigerian nairas, approximately 8 cents on the naira against book value. The transaction closes in 19 days. The dual creditor conflict is resolved through a structured inter-creditor settlement she drafts herself in a single weekend. The inter-creditor settlement is later cited by a Lagos commercial court as a model document. Nadia does not issue a press release. She hires a logistics operations manager, a finance controller, and 3 route planners. She does not change Meridian's name, its contracts, or its client relationships. She changes its balance sheet, its creditor structure, and its cost base. Within 90 days, the company is cash flow positive for the first time in 3 years. She calls it her proof of concept. She opens a new folder on the encrypted drive. She labels it Deal 2. Over the following 8 months, Nadia executes 3 more acquisitions using different patterns from the 11. Each deal is different in sector and structure. Each is identical in logic: find the legal condition the market hasn't priced in, acquire at that discount, and operate correctly. Deal 2, a mid-tier printing company in Ibadan using Pattern 7, an expired exclusivity clause in a joint venture agreement that leaves one partner with unilateral acquisition rights. Cost: 67 million Nigerian nairas. Current valuation: 310 million Nigerian nairas. Deal 3, an Accra-based cold storage facility using Pattern 2, a cross-default clause that triggered incorrectly due to a currency denomination error, voiding the enforcement action. Cost: 140 million Nigerian nairas equivalent. Currently profitable. Deal 4, a Lagos media company using Pattern 9, a shareholder deadlock provision that, under the company's own articles, mandates a compulsory sale at a formula price that had not been updated in 11 years. Cost: 55 million Nigerian nairas. First profitable quarter, month 3 post-acquisition. For companies: 11 months. Total deployed capital: 456 million Nigerian nairas. Combined current valuation: 1.4 billion Nigerian nairas. Nadia is introduced to Kahind Adesanya, a retired investment banker turned private equity advisor, 61 years old, who spent 3 decades structuring distressed asset deals across West Africa. He asks to see her acquisition framework. She emails him the 11 on a Thursday. He calls her on Friday morning. He says, "I spent 30 years looking for this document and building pieces of it myself. You've assembled the full architecture." He says it quietly without performance. He is not flattering her. He is making an assessment. He asks her 3 questions about Pattern 6, the most technically complex pattern, involving a receiver's statutory duty conflict under the comma framework. Her answers are better than his. He agrees to advise her on deal structuring at no fee in exchange for a 2% portfolio carry. She agrees in a single sentence. She does not ask for time to think about it. She has been thinking about it since she wrote the 11. With 4 profitable acquisitions and Kahind's endorsement, Nadia approaches a single family office, the Adifa Capital Group, with a private placement memorandum for her holding company, Koros Capital. She asks for 500 million Nigerian nairas. The memorandum is 42 pages. The first page contains 1 line of context and 1 paragraph of track record. The other 41 pages are the 11, annotated, illustrated with the 4 completed deals, and stress-tested against 3 adverse scenarios. The Adifa family office principal, Tund Adifa, reads it over a weekend. He calls Nadia on Monday and says, "I have one question. Why haven't the big PE firms done this already?" Nadia says, "Because they have analysts who read for risk. I read for structure. It's a different question." He transfers the funds in 14 days. Koros Capital is capitalized. Nadia opens Koros Capital's first proper office, a 4-room floor on Victoria Island, 8 staff, a deal sourcing team, an in-house legal function, and a dedicated compliance officer. She hires all 8 people herself. Every one of them has read the 11 before their first day. She writes the hiring philosophy in the Koros internal handbook: "We do not hire people who are good at following instructions. We hire people who are good at reading what the instructions are actually saying, which is frequently not the same thing." The compliance officer, a 32-year-old named Sono Yelerin, asks in his interview, "What's the difference between a loophole and a legal right?" Nadia says, "Intent versus drafting. If the drafting permits it and no fraudulent intent is required to execute it, it's a right. We only work in rights." Son is hired before he leaves the building. Koros Capital's fifth acquisition is its most significant. Olanrawaju Integrated Services, a diversified conglomerate with operations in construction, property management, and light manufacturing, carrying 4.7 billion Nigerian nairas in assets and 3.1 billion Nigerian nairas in contested debt across 4 creditor classes. The deal takes 4 months to structure. It uses a combination of patterns 3, 6, and 11, the most complex multi-pattern deal the 11 has ever been applied to. The acquisition price, 480 million Nigerian nairas for a controlling stake in the restructured entity. The structure requires simultaneous creditor class negotiations, a pre-pack administration arrangement, and a new shareholder agreement drafted from scratch. Nadia leads all 3 workstreams personally. Kahine sits beside her on every creditor call. At closing, Kahine says, "That was the cleanest multi-creditor pre-pack I've seen in West Africa." Nadia says, "It'll look cleaner next time." He believes her. Business Day Nigeria publishes a profile, The Contract Queen, how a Lagos lawyer is quietly building West Africa's fastest-growing distressed asset portfolio. The article is accurate. Nadia did not give the interview. A junior journalist pieced the story together from court registry filings, company's house records, and 2 sources who had been on the receiving end of Koros deals. The profile is read 190,000 times. Nadia's phone receives 47 unsolicited deal inquiries in 72 hours. She responds to none of them for 4 days. Then she responds to 3. The other 44 she files under one heading in her inbox, noise. She tells her team, the article is fine. Attention is not strategy. Don't confuse the two. Koros Capital's 6th acquisition, a federal government-linked infrastructure company, collapses at the final stage when an undisclosed related party agreement surfaces in due diligence that would make the acquisition legally untenable without ministerial approval that will never come. 4 months of deal work. 12 million Nigerian nairas in advisory costs. 0 acquisition. Nadia calls a team debrief within 48 hours. She identifies the point in due diligence where the related party agreement should have been detected and wasn't. She writes a new clause into Koros's deal process, a mandatory government nexus flag at the first stage of any acquisition targeting a company with regulatory relationships. The clause takes her 40 minutes to draft. She calls it Pattern 12. She adds it to the encrypted drive. The deal lost cost 12 million Nigerian nairas. The lesson is worth 10 times that. 4 months of work. Gone. 12 million Nigerian nairas. Gone. Not because the strategy failed. Because something existed that she didn't see. Nadia stands at the whiteboard. Not angry. Not shaken. Just recalculating. She writes 2 words at the bottom of the 11. Pattern 12. Then she pauses. Because for the first time in 4 years, she's asking a different question. What else exists that I haven't read yet? You're watching the Don Film Vault. Catch the full story. Like and subscribe to stay updated.